Thank you.
I have one small one.
Yeah.
So, in the second topic or third topic, the review the first drafts, I did not, we did not get it together to address the fixes to the diagram 3.1, the one with the top of bank and all that. So that's, Jeff spent some time working on that, and he sent some proposed edits and suggestions, and Brad was going to get together with Pam Miller from Conservation Commission, who was the one who brought this up as a problem. Pam Miller from Derby. And that didn't happen this week. It was going to, and then it didn't. So we're just going to postpone that.
Postpone just
that one item, the diagram 3.1.
diagram 3.1.
Those are not ready for prime time. Not ready. Everything else is as we discussed. Yeah.
Okay.
And I do have a couple of announcements.
Okay, a couple of announcements, you said?
Well, just one in particular. So the town attorney did get back to me this past Monday with his suggestions for the 4 sets of ULURs Amendments that we had the hearings on. And the suggestions were, for the most part, just like textual edits, minor stuff, typos and clarifications, nothing really substantive. He didn't tell us that we were way off base with any of them. So I have those. And however, I didn't have time to turn them around and get them out to you, but we can take that up at our next meeting.
Pick that up when?
At our next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll take those up because I do want everyone to have a chance to look at those to make sure that you agree that they're not significant changes and that you're good with them. And then our Brad Holden also weighed in with a couple of suggestions, which one of which was relevant and the other which was not. So, I added those and added a couple of thoughts of my own as well. And so what you'll get in preparation for next meeting when we talk about them is edited versions that show what's changed in highlighted in yellow, just to make it easy to go right to those parts. And you'll see they're pretty minor.
Okay.
Yeah. And what was the other update? We should talk next time is also its coming attractions. We'll also talk about, and we'll have to make a decision about the opportunity to apply for a planning grant. We had the version that we put in earlier this year. And so I guess it would make sense if we have time at the end of our agenda tonight to talk about whether we want to put in for the same kind of activity or project, or whether we want to go for something different, because between now and our next meeting, I need to actually write the grant. And if it's going to be a different grant, I kind of need to know that sooner rather than later. So I guess that would fall into the category of a change to the agenda, because it's fairly substantive and you all haven't had time to think about it much, and I haven't either, to be honest. But it's because it's due on November 3rd, and because the grant application has to be endorsed by both this body and by the select board in order to be submitted on time at the beginning of November, we need to start that process.
So you want to come up with where the money wants to be spent.
Exactly.
So the last time it was on, I forget, was it the?
It was to do something that's similar in scope to what the survey that Zach and David were working on. It was that was a slice of the larger idea embedded in that project. But I don't want to start talking about it until we dealt with our other business.
Yep.
Yeah, that's okay, David.
Okay.
So that would be a change to the agenda, just planning grant.
Okay. So we'll pick up those at the end, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before the minutes.
So public comment, I guess there's no public, so.
That's easy. That's easy.
Yeah, that's easy. So we'll move on to the drafts that you submitted, Larry.
Okay, I have some hard copies here. Let's look at those.
And the first one is repealing section 3.7A. Everybody's reviewed this, I guess?
Yeah.
So we'll just open it up for some discussion. Do you have any, anything they'd like to say about this? I do, but I'll let others speak first.
Well, I think it makes sense to do it because it makes the whole process less cumbersome, I guess. Just because you don't have to go to the DRB for conditional use permit for those uses. And I thought that everything covered there was appropriate.
I mean, it doesn't, this would not preclude all the requirements that certain kinds of projects have to go through conditional use review for a change in use, but it's more that it shouldn't be automatic, that if someone is adding a use or it has an existing mixed use, that they're changing from one type of use to another, like the example I gave was a building like in the village center that has first floor commercial and second floor apartments. So if they're changing the commercial use to a retail use, for example, like an office, an accountant's office to a hair salon or something like that, it shouldn't be a big deal. And I think, this, whatever reason this was included in the land use regs, this is a pretty standard provision, but it's very limiting and it's very bureaucratic. So the issue now is under Act 47, we want to do everything we can as a state to encourage housing. And so we shouldn't put unnecessary bureaucratic and procedural obstacles in the way of doing conversions. And it's especially pertinent in situations that are much more typical in larger cities and towns where you have an unutilized or underutilized commercial space that could be converted into housing. And it becomes a very big deal to do that right now under current rules, and it shouldn't be. And it's a great use for vacant commercial or industrial space, like lofts, to convert them into residential apartments. So shouldn't be a big deal.
But this is like planning for the future of the possibility of a townwide sewer. If that happens, then these things will be more happen. Because right now it's not a lot that can be done.
I mean, people get very creative, and you don't need to look any further than downtown Essex Junction or downtown St. Albans to see how these kinds of conversions have flourished. That creative developers have taken underutilized commercial spaces and storefronts and businesses and really gone to town, developing viable multifamily residential.
There's a really good example of this, I think, it's Underhill Flats or Jericho, right on the boundary, that church that's for sale there, that could very easily fit into this. I mean, it's perfect.
Yes. Yeah, and as churches, lose members of their congregations and get so small that they're no longer viable, churches actually, some of them can make great conversions to residences.
Well, this says what we're deleting is only one principal use or structure shall be located on a single lot.
Right.
What that means then is that there's no limit to one principal use or structure. And in fact, that means that all the districts with 5-acre zoning, 3-acre zoning, 10-acre zoning, 12 acres or 15-acre zoning are no longer 15, 10, 5, and 3-acre zoning, because you can put any number of houses on those lots. It's not limited to one principal dwelling. So it really eliminates the whole concept of districts with specific acreages.
Well, it wouldn't change the minimum lot size.
No,
And it wouldn't change the lot coverage.
Which, yes. Okay, well, look at the lot coverage. Now, for instance, on the Mansfield Scenic Preservation, that's 10-acre zoning. The maximum coverage that you're allowed with structures, building structures, is 10% of that. So that's 1 acre, basically, which would allow for, in a 10-acre district, Well, let's see, I've got that written down on page 22. Okay, on page 22, okay. So 1 acre amounts to 43,560 square feet. So you would be allowed basically in a 10-acre area, if it's a really nice field with gravel, etc. You could have 10 3,000 square foot houses in there, plus 10 garages that were 1,356 feet. So that's, we could see from the top of the Pleasant Valley all the way down with all those nice fields on the right-hand side, you could put 50 houses there probably. And, so I'm opposed.
Okay. You're saying this is a potential unintended consequence.
Yeah, right. That's what it's saying. I mean, this is the only spot where it does say that only one principal use of structure, and now you're allowed all the other auxiliary uses, subordinate structures and so on, and they're defined further on
Right.
through here. So it's not saying you can't have more on the lot, basically. It just has to fall into certain categories or under certain regulations.
Yeah.
You could put 10 houses. You could, that's not what this is about, right?
No, I mean, so.
That's what it's saying. That's what you're deleting here.
Yeah, but go ahead, Larry.
Well, I was going to say, for example, for the state septic rules would still apply. So you'd have to have proven and build adequate septic capacity, water capacity for if there were 10 dwellings. You would still need things like site plan review for commercial use. That was going to be expensive. You would still need conditional use review if you're converting it from, say, an agricultural to commercial use or agricultural to residential use. So all those underlying requirements still apply. I mean, I think the most important word in this proposal is that principal use, that is sort of the central concept here, because when you're restricting to only one type of use on an entire lot, then the issue there is that multiple uses are explicitly banned, right? That's the short version of
Well,
this.
subordinate uses are allowed.
But what's
Well,
subordinate?
it's a conditional use. You could get the permit to build what you wanted. So you'd have to go through
You
that
could
process.
get the conditional use, yeah.
This is also getting rid of structures, principal structures.
Yeah.
So
I
this
mean,
would,
it allows, well, it just eliminates the concept of a single lot in a sense. A single lot is defined by having one principal dwelling on it. If you have a lot
so
that has, I mean, what's a lot if not, if the lot says you can put as many houses as you want as long as you fulfill the water, et cetera, requirements, then.
Wouldn't someone have to go through subdivision though to make that financially feasible, to mortgage it and to sell those lots as individual lots?
Subdivision? No, I don't think so. I mean, if you're taking it out right here,
Uh-huh.
and this is the only place where it does say that a lot will have one principal use, basically. This is the only place that I found that it says that.
Mm-hmm.
Each district does say, that you can, it says the limit of the building is 10%.
Yes.
Of it.
Lot coverage.
But that's huge.
Mhm.
So, I think, in order to achieve what you're trying to achieve, I don't think this is going to work, basically. I think this is it's too open-ended.
So reading this,
Mhm.
it means that if you live in the scenic preservation district, 10 acres, you could have your house and you say you wanted to build a 10,000 square foot factory to make bobbins or whatever.
Yep.
You wouldn't have to get a conditional use permit.
Yeah, you would.
It would be permitted, or it's under permitted
You'd
use.
still have to get a conditional use permit to
Or-
change the use to that extent.
To that extent.
Yeah, if it's, so table 2.1, page 7 and 8 lists out all the different, it's the use tables and dimensional standards. So it lists out by type of use, all the different requirements, and some are permitted, some are conditional use, some are
Okay,
site
right,
plan
yes, I
review,
got that.
which are,
Yeah.
both required
Yeah.
typically. So your example is industrial use, you would require conditional use and site plan review on a rural residential lot.
Okay.
You could pile on as many of those uses that are allowed, basically.
Still have to
you'll
get
have
the
a whole
permit.
list on that
You'll
table.
have to get the permits.
Yeah, right, yeah, you would.
And it would be
You could
subject to
pile it all up.
DRB review. I mean, to go back to your example, I think, that most typically someone who wants to carve up a lot into housing lots, residential housing lots, would plan to sell those individual lots, and people would be interested in buying and building houses on those individual lots, but that's multiple lots that have to go through subdivision review and be approved and meet all the standards in our chapter, I think it's 6 or 7 for subdivision review in order to get approval to do that.
Which means that on a 10-acre lot, you can't build 10 houses. You can't subdivide it into 10 lots. Those are the regulations now. This is going to change that?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Subdivision review is still required. But as a practical matter, David,
Yeah.
you could do multifamily housing that was in common ownership, like with a condominium or a co-op or elder housing or that type of thing. You could do that on a single lot. And that is a typical development strategy if there's septic for it and if you can get the other necessary permits for it. And there's, again, a whole framework within our regulations to accommodate projects like that if someone wants to build them. But if for individual houses, people typically want to own the land, right? And they want to have, permanent tenure on the land. So it has to be separated into a lot in order for them to purchase the lot and build a house.
But if it's not limited by this, then the Development Review Board could say, well, this isn't really that, we could, go ahead and go with that. Say, well, all right, I'll build 10 Levittown size houses, basically, and I'll be the owner, I'll rent them out. And,
Okay.
I think it's too open-ended. I don't know, if what you're trying to achieve sounds good here, and if we can do it in some other way than just eliminating the principal use of a lot. So,
Yeah, so what is the intent of this on a 10-acre lot? Is it from the current regulations, my understanding is you can have one house and one accessory dwelling.
Yep.
And this would not change that, or this language might change that?
I don't think it does, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I
it
wouldn't think
doesn't
it.
change?
some exceptions. So we make an exception for adaptive reuse, which only applies to an older structure, historic structure. So you can take an old barn, 50 years or older, and you can convert it into a different type of use. And it makes an exception for mixed use. So an existing mixed use, say in the village with first floor commercial or retail and second floor residential, that could morph into a different type of a mixed use. So those are exceptions in this rule as it stands now. But all other kinds of multiple uses of a property, as I understand it, would be prohibited without going through the formal conditional use review process. And I think that's the rub, that's the reason to change it, is because you find yourself in situations, I mean, this, just an example, something happened in Charlotte where somebody wanted to take like a 75 or 80 acre farm, and there was an existing historic farmhouse, and they wanted to convert it from a single unit dwelling into 4 or 5 apartments. And they were forced to go through plan unit development review, which in turn forced them to dedicate half the acreage for permanent conservation. And they had to go through all kinds of hoops in order to just chop up the inside of the building. And it was way over the top. I mean, if the idea was to allow a property owner to go ahead and make more housing units from what was already there in a respectful way for a historic structure, why was the town making it that difficult? And I think that's the basic instinct behind this. Whether the execution is right or not. I don't
Yeah,
know.
we gotta figure something else, I think.
Yeah.
So is there any objections to my proposal that this be reviewed and rejected as it stands, but reviewed with a different submission?
Or maybe tabled it and for
Or tabled.
reconsideration, yeah.
Yeah. Is that a proposition? That
Yeah, I think
Sure,
we should
sure,
table
sure.
this.
That's good.
Okay. Okay.
And just to be clear on the Act 47 and the 181.
Yeah.
And that's law directed by the state.
Mhm.
So we really have no say in what our existing regulations are. The directive is just to conform with the state at this point.
I was trying to go with the spirit of Act 47 rather than a specific provision that said towns can't do this. Okay. So Act 47, nor does existing statute before that say you can't have a provision like this, but I'm just aware from prior experience, especially in Charlotte, that this kind of provision tends to trigger duplicative and bureaucratic extended reviews of things that to most people would be common sense. Like, sure, why not allow this because it fits with the fabric of the community already? And why are we making the property owner jump through hoops to do something that just sort of on its face makes sense to most people?
I'd like to chop some of that out of there.
Yeah.
Clear it up.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Okay. Okay, number two, reduce table 3.1, minimum off-street parking required for all residential units from 2 spaces per unit to 1 space per unit. This may be an easy one.
Yes.
Everybody agree on
Yeah.
this?
Seems like a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, on to 3. In table 2.1 and Underhill Flats District, and table 2.3 and 2.4 make multifamily dwellings a permitted use. These now require conditional use review. So it comes down to the table, and the proposal presented is canceling out for the Underhill Flats Village Center, maximum 5 units, so there would be no limit on the number of units, and the same being for the Underhill Center Village. So, any discussion on that? Might as well
So whatever
consider
you could fit on a project, pretty much.
Assuming septic capacity.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's often a driver of whether something is financially feasible or not, as you know.
Yeah, so this would mean that, well, you could have a 20 unit building in the village center here, you know, or in the village flats, or maybe a 30 unit building. You know. I'm not in favor of that, but
What's that? You're not in favor of that?
no.
Well, so
I
I'm in
wouldn't
favor of
say I'm
5
not.
units in both places, basically, at this point. It might be changed in the future. There might be,
Yeah.
development down in the Jericho village center that will move things in this direction, but I don't think we're ready at this point for it. I would say 5 units maximum in both places is something to stick with for now. Stick with it in the flats and increase it in the center. And then if things get going down there, then we can say, well, look, it's going that way. There's no point in opposing it. Let's go with it. But at this point, I think it's just going to raise issues.
So is there, I mean, I have not been here that long. Is there some kind of history behind this drawing these numbers, including these numbers in the table? Like, is there a reason why?
What numbers? The 3
The
and 4?
3 and 5 units.
Yeah.
Now,
We worked on that probably 2 or 3 years ago. maybe.
Yeah, there was discussion
we-
about village center upping it to 4 units because there was 4 units that somehow got reduced to 3 units.
And we raised it to 4 stories, right? From
Or something like that.
for the height, we changed the height
Yeah.
also. I don't think that ever got pass through that.
Maybe not.
I think that was just one of those things that we talked about and we agreed
Yeah.
on, and it's in that
Paper
paper note,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
all those notes, but.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess what I envision, like personally, is that someday, okay, somebody's gonna buy one of those dilapidated old houses in the flats. They're
Level
gonna
it.
tear it down,
Yeah.
and they're gonna wanna put up a 10-unit building
Mhm.
that's, a nice looking building like they done in Winooski S6, all right through there.
Yeah.
That's eventually gonna happen here, but that might not be in 2 or 3 years. It might be 20 years or
4 years.
yeah. Or 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Could be 3 or 4 years. I mean,
So,
Yeah.
So it's like, so we probably should start thinking and planning for that potential and not just disregard it.
Uh-huh.
So I guess maybe it's curious to see what everybody thinks about it. I'm not opposed to it. I really like what they've done to Winooski. I think it's just like the coolest little section of Route 15 there, right into I mean, it's beautiful.
There's a good example in Richmond, the Creamery
Yeah.
building.
yes.
Right.
It's like right across from the supermarket. That's got to be probably like a 10 or 15
Yeah.
unit building, which
I
is
am,
very tasteful, fits in with the aesthetic of the community, and seems like that makes a lot of sense.
yeah. I mean,
But they're trying to do like the next phase, but they don't have the zoning in line to do that yet, so they're trying to change the zoning to make it work. They're kind of like behind where we're in the same situation where we are now.
Yep.
That issue. They want to do that on a couple of buildings down there.
yeah.
I mean, it's the idea of like quadplexes, just as one example. So like you have a unit or a building that's already a duplex side by side, for example, and somebody wants to chop up each unit into 2 apartments, so there'd be 4 units total. And I mean, I don't know how many of those already exist in the 2 village districts, but it seems like having this 3 units limits in this village seems a little arbitrary, because that type of conversion couldn't happen. Where somebody couldn't take a large house on a large lot and add another in addition to it, so that would add up to a total of 4 units. And right now they can't do that
Right.
with this rule. And so the 3 unit limit strikes me as arbitrary. Also, this is one of those things, going back to something you said a few minutes ago, Roy, that if the Riverside Flats District acquires community wastewater service, the Act 47 specifically requires us to to not limit the multifamily structures to less than 4 units per lot.
To not limit.
Yeah, so, they're saying that if we had an arbitrary ceiling, say of 3 units per lot, and its community sewer was installed, then that would have to change at
Yeah.
that time. And so part of the reason why I put this on here was, well, part of it was sort of pro-housing policy, but also because the statute would require us to make that change, and why not just make it now while we're talking about it, and while, if we feel it makes sense as a way to encourage developers to think about creative infill redevelopment of existing lots in our 2 village districts.
And we're allowing 5 units already in.
Yes, that's true. So that part's in compliance.
Okay, yeah. I agree, the 3 units is kind of arbitrarily small in the center here. I'd like to see it 5.
Okay.
Can you solve your concern though by changing or continuing with the conditional permitting versus just?
Like more than 5 units is a conditional use.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, it's going to be, well, they'll have to do a site plan review and a conditional use.
Anytime conditional use is triggered as a process requirement, site plan also has to be done in conjunction.
Yeah,
with
you couldn't
site
just
plan.
walk in today and get a permit to build a 5 unit or 4 unit,
Yeah.
whatever the rule says,
Mhm.
in the flats. You just couldn't do that. You'd have to go to the DRB.
Mhm.
And so it'll remain that way, right? We're just writing the bylaw for
Got it.
people to walk in here and say, I want to build a 4 unit apartment here. And then the zoning administrator would say, here's the application for your conditional use permit to do that. I believe
Well-
that's how it works, so.
Well, it's proposing just a permitted use, not the, and
The
so on, which would
proposal.
be okay, I think, for a 5 unit
Yeah,
in both of those. But if we go, maybe what you're saying, Jen, would be appropriate for the flats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of having a simple permitted use in all cases for both the multifamily for both in the village centers, you could say that you could keep the maximum 5 units or keep the 5 unit possibility of 5 or more units, but say that would be a conditional use review. Would that satisfy your concern?
5 or more.
Rather than making it
I think
permitted
5
So to-
units
so to
with
get a-
just a permit would be okay.
use? Is it,
With
okay,
5 units.
so more than 5 units?
Yeah, I would say
Yes.
more than
So-
5 units, yeah.
So 4 units would be walk in, get the permit, no
Yes.
conditional use.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm all right.
For
with
5
that. But
units.
more than that, I mean, it seems like it needs to have more eyes put on it.
Yeah.
Well, 5 units is what we're saying, would not need a conditional use.
Right.
I'm curious what
No,
other people
would.
think.
Oh, wait,
It would
we
not.
need to,
It'd be more than 5 units. Is that just what we were talking about?
Yes.
that was what I was saying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
So more than 5 units would need a conditional use and site review and all
right,
that.
yeah.
But 5 units would not.
What do other-
Now for the center. So should be the same be for the center with, an unlimited number of units?
Well, there'd probably never be a townwide sewer in the center.
Right, yeah.
So
I would
that's
think-
all. Thinking about this, where would you do that? I know there are 4 units in the old country store there, right at the stop sign, but
So rather than raise flags with the public, why not just keep the Underhill Center Village with a maximum of 5 units? If we put in conditional use.
Yeah,
for the owners,
yeah, right.
It's just gonna create feedback,
yeah.
you know?
Okay,
So the conditional use, it triggers a public hearing and
yes.
brings in all the landowners,
Mhm.
right, landowners and,
Yeah, for an
What- what-
education, we probably should all go to one.
yeah, site plan. What else is in the conditional review process as far as the steps?
And we'll talk about that down the page there.
Okay, do we,
So just David, to summarize, so make sure I understand
Yes.
your point here. So you want to keep the maximum in flats, except that you want to make it possible for someone to come in and apply for more than 5 units in the flats
Mhm.
with conditional use review.
yes,
And then in the Underhill Center Village, you want to keep the maximum 3 units
at 5,
at 5 units.
raise that to 5,
Both districts, okay.
Yeah, keep it.
as a permitted use.
And that 5 units is, it could be one building with five units or 5 individual units.
Yeah, it could be, 2 duplexes in a single, starting with a single that already exists and have someone put in a couple of duplexes in back. And I think mostly what I'm thinking about here, and maybe I'm thinking too small, but I'm thinking mostly about possibilities for infill development in the, back portion of a lot for an existing home. So you already have the frontage, you have the driveway, you have an existing structure, and then you have some room in the back of a lot that you could add more units, assuming available septic capacity, which is a big. Okay.
Okay,
Number 4.
Number 4. Definition of interested persons who can appeal a ZA or DRB decision by petition from 10 to 12 residents. So, any questions or discussion about this? Seems pretty simple, basically.
Yeah.
So, everybody in favor of this?
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. So 5, for section 5.4, conditional use review, repeal language allowing DRB to impose increased buffers, setback screening, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We go down below, the only change is adding on, except in the Underhill Flats Village Center and Underhill Village Center districts, the DRB may require these measures. So there's these, and this has to do with the mitigation factors.
Mhm.
The mitigation, and the idea is to make it simpler for an approval of a proposal by eliminating the requirements of mitigation. But I can see that this might actually work in the opposite way. If you don't have the mitigating factors, then the opposition could be strongly opposed to something. Whereas if they allow some mitigating factors, this could actually help a proposal to go through. Not allowing the mitigating factors may work in the opposite direction than intended. So I would say that we save the language as it is.
So, this is a mixture of different motivations here. So in the first paragraph on what the issue is, we already have in statute before Act 181, or Act 47 rather, towns really cannot ban multifamily housing to districts that are zoned for dense development. We're not talking about banning here, but then Act 47 further restricted the discretion of development review boards to deny or restrict multifamily housing in those areas that are already zoned for village or town center development because of objections based on the character of the area consideration. So character of the area really is kind of a blunt-edged instrument that is used by neighbors to try to block projects so they don't like how it looks, or that they want to say, well, we have single-family dwellings and duplexes around here, but to then pop in a fourplex or a 6-unit apartment building is not within the character of our neighborhood. Therefore, the DRB should say no. And the DRB currently has the discretion under our rules now to say, well, you have to screen it, or you have to put in a bigger buffer, like a bigger setback than would otherwise be required, or you have to, put in $50,000 worth of fancy landscaping. They're allowed to set those kind of conditions. And usually it's not necessarily members of the DRB who are trying to be difficult. They're more responding to people who come into a public hearing, neighbors, who say, I don't want to look at this, and it doesn't fit in this neighborhood. Right. And so what this is trying to do by accepting the two village districts is to say that in those districts, which are already state designated village centers, that these kinds of, the DRB can't even take up these kinds of considerations. They can just tell neighbors who come to the hearing, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we appreciate your concerns, but we're not allowed to consider the character of the area.
Here's a thought on this.
Yeah.
So when they built the Dollar General in Jericho,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the DRB decided that it doesn't look like any other Dollar General. The square steel building with the flat roof.
Right.
It's kind of like designed that. Like, why would you build something like
Yeah.
that? They wanted it to look like a house or a ranch, I guess.
Yep.
So this would eliminate that possibility.
I think what you don't want to do is put the DRB in a position of trying to design for the taste.
Yeah, right.
I think we want the property owner to be in the driver's seat, and the property owner should be able to propose whatever they think they can sell or rent, right? Because we're in a capitalist economy, and we don't want to place undue restrictions based on arbitrary or subjective considerations of what other people think might look nice. Because developers need to have the space to propose what they think will work and what will sell. And I think that it's risky to put the DRB in the position of being adjudicators of taste.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the DRB can make suggestions that they think will improve the project. But there's a big leap from that to then having the DRB have absolute control over what something looks like, especially if it's done in reaction to neighbors who object because they don't want multifamily housing next to them. You know, and the legislature took pains in other examples to say that communities could not regulate things like group homes for people with disabilities. Communities cannot regulate, and this is an Act 74 change, cannot regulate emergency shelters going in. Communities cannot regulate housing for recovery housing. This is a relatively new thing. So if somebody wants to create like a group house that's sober housing for people in recovery from substance abuse, communities cannot ban that. And so, you know, the legislature drew a really clear black line around those things. So this is a step further saying that we don't even want to invite people to comment on whether something fits with the character of the area when it comes to resident multifamily housing, specifically in village districts and downtowns.
You know, and the character of the neighborhood, this is a problem because it's scattered through the whole regulations here and there. And this does try to pin it down to something specific, you know, where it says, as defined by zoning district purpose statements.
Yes.
That's in the regs here.
Yeah.
And then specifically stated and relevant policies and standards of the Underhill town plan. So there's something specific there. So they're trying to tie it down to something specific.
Right.
But character shows up all over the place. And if character is part of the defining elements for allowing something or not allowing something, and yet here it comes through, it says you can't appeal on the character basis. So it's I don't know. We still have all the character situations there. And maybe we need something more, or need to emphasize these specific elements here of what character breaks down into, because I guess you could come back and sue not under the character, but the specific element of the character is this. You can sue under that or appeal under that.
Yeah, that was my question. So if somebody goes to appeal this in court, it's automatically thrown out.
It gives the town a much stronger basis to get it thrown out. Yeah.
Okay.
So if the DRB granted a permit, neighbors decide they don't like it because they feel this 4-unit or 8-unit housing project is out of character of the neighborhood, and they appeal on that basis. You know, the first question that the environmental court will ask is, did the town follow state statute in issuing this decision, and did the town follow its own rules, including the policies that are embedded in the town plan and in the land use regs? And if the answers to those two questions are yes, the town did follow the rules, then it becomes a much bigger hill to climb.
Wasn't this an issue in Westford?
Could have been, yeah, I didn't follow that case.
I think the artist with the middle fingers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He wanted to build on his property, I think, something in the effect of like an artist studio or something on his property. The city didn't agree. So I think he's like a bronze caster or something like that. And he made 2 middle fingers that point. Statues that point to the city of Westford.
He started with 1. I think he has 3 now.
He has 3 now.
Yeah.
Oh, he's still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard he sold one, so
Oh, maybe he did. Maybe
That would
making a
be
business out of it.
I want to go check it out.
And I think it's certainly a controversial subject, right?
Yeah,
And just because it just relies on somebody's judgment and taste to
exactly.
determine what is not fitting in the character.
Yeah.
So I think for the one-off of the crazy person who wants to build something ridiculous and you have no say in the aesthetic of something, that seems a little bit dangerous to me, or not creating what the town plan would want as far as trying to maintain somewhat of the character of what Underhill is. And so I think, most people are responsible, they're gonna build something that's gonna
I
be,
agree.
gonna work, and especially developers who have plans and architects working on it, but
Yeah.
how do you protect yourself from the one-off that's gonna, everybody's gonna be,
Yeah.
why do we let ourselves do that?
You can't anticipate every instance
Right.
where that's like that's.
So when you're thinking about this, you're not necessarily thinking about the lowest common denominator, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm more thinking about the NIMBYs, to be honest with you.
Right.
I'm trying to undercut them as much as possible, and to David's point, that character of the area sort of permeates the regulations. I mean, ideally, there should be a pretty close correspondence between, in the section of our town plan, I think it's chapter 1, where it talks about the different areas of town, and there's a narrative description of what the defining characteristics of the Mount Mansfield Scenic Preservation District, the villages, et cetera. And in a perfect world, you would have those policy statements or broad goal statements echoed in each section of the land use regs, specifically the tables at chapter 2, because, the purpose statements at the top of each table for each district should echo, those broad goal statements or focus statements of why does this district exist and what's supposed to happen here. Because then that puts all the specific rules under that in context. And so when the DRB gets an application to build a project in one of those districts, they can, first look at the purpose statement at the top and say, is this in keeping with the purpose, or is it way out in left field, has nothing to do with, what is happening elsewhere in the zoning district? And then the second question is, how does the proposal conform to the rules, dimensional standards, uses, permitted conditional uses, and the other fine print that's beneath those standards tables. So you're giving, they do have those roadmaps. But, when we rewrite the town plan next, we might want to think about, is there that one-on-one correspondence? Like, is the description of the goals and the vision for each of our districts, the different parts of town, is that matched in the regulatory framework and the rules for that part of town? Because if not, it ought to be.
Yeah, well, I wonder if we should do something actually and say that, that as character is used through the regulations, that specific elements of it are legitimate issues. But the word character itself is just too vague and so on. So should we actually do that? Actually bring together what is said specifically about this and have this stated somewhere.
Yeah.
And propose this along with what we're proposing.
Yeah.
So that's something maybe for what, next meeting or the
Sort of
following?
a table, or maybe think about consideration of the town plan. But, meanwhile, you can all take your time individually and think about, okay, here's what the town plan says about each district.
Yeah.
Here's what the purpose statement is at the top of the land use regs for that district. Are they in alignment? Is there any ambiguity there that is it a hole big enough that someone can drive a truck through it? If they wanted to propose a project that was really not at all in keeping with the goals for that district. And if so, can we fix that? Because, short term, we can fix the land use regs. Town plan fixes are, maybe a couple of years down the road.
Yeah,
At this point.
right. Well, now, so the question comes back to whether the proposal is going to possibly result in cancellations of projects, refusal of projects, or going to facilitate project. And I don't know that I have any answer on that, really. Is there, where do we go from here on that? Is maybe some advice from the DRB?
I definitely would share these all with the DRB.
Yeah.
And ask what they think.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who wrestle with the character of the area.
Right.
You should just know their feedback as far as how they typically navigate that when that topic comes up, and what they're looking at and what they might suggest to tweak to get things to go through.
Yep.
Yeah. So for this one, shall we recommend that it be looked at by the DRB and then brought back for reconsideration?
So
Is that fair enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Good. That finishes our 4 units there.
And we're right on time for the next item.
Yes.
So, yeah, so I guess I was looking to take our brainstorming that we did last time about this topic a couple steps further. So I proposed like basically three topics to get a little more specific. One is what do you think the best way to frame the idea of forming a housing task force would be? Like, how do we talk about it? If I was going to write a post for Front Porch Forum about it, like what would be the headline?
The call to action.
Yeah, the call to action, exactly. That's the first question. And then the second question would be, who should be invited? Either specific individuals or, are there groups that we know of in town who would be inclined to be interested in this topic enough to maybe take it in-house a little bit and ask their own members to consider it? And then the third question is, are there sort of, and this is similar to the second one, are there organizations that might sponsor something like this? Like, could this be a project of, I don't know, the United Church of Underhill, for example, or the Rotary Club, or, is there a natural sort of organizational home for this activity? So, framing.
You talked about this at the last
Yeah.
meeting. I wasn't here for that, so, but I do recall mention of it previous to that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to form a housing task force.
Yeah, and this is, the context was specifically, we have probably a number of the kinds of projects that we've been talking about tonight that will be coming forward in the next couple or 3 years, especially if the septic system comes to fruition. So, we can pretty much guarantee that there will be people in the community who would oppose such projects just like reflexively. Underhill's a rural town. We don't need multifamily housing here. We don't need housing at all. Things are just great the way they are. So the idea behind housing task force is you'd have an organized group of people who would be ready to step up and come to DRB meetings and support projects like that if they are in alignment with our regulations.
What's the desired number of people on this task force?
I mean, it could be as few as 5.
Okay, that's,
It could be 50. I mean, I think the question is, what's the critical mass?
yeah. And who is the audience? Like, who are the target members that we would want to draw in for said task force?
I mean, I think it's people who have history in town, people who own property, who live here, trusted members of the community, people who are, have maybe some leadership credibility, but are not involved in town government.
Right.
People who, can introduce the moral element into the argument, like, the housing that's being built now is only accessible to rich people. Just to put not too fine a point on it, but.
I don't think that's going to change, really, but.
But, we have a lot of potential residents in town who are not represented in our conversations about permitting because they can't afford to buy property, they can't afford to rent here.
Right.
So that's who we're looking at right now.
Yeah, so it's like elders who would like to downsize from a house that's too big now that they're empty nesters, but they can't afford to find anything else in town, so they can sell their place to a young growing family and move into a smaller place and still be in the Underhill community. We have working families who, holding down 2 or 3 jobs, who just don't have time to advocate for anything because they're busy raising a family and working 2 jobs, but they'd like to live here. And they think about the loss to our community because we can't accommodate those kinds of folks. So, so it's difficult to generate a constituency to support something if they're not here.
Yeah.
So, the folks, I think the folks that would serve well on this kind of task force that would really enliven the conversation and make it much more of a level playing field would be people who are aware of those things. And could cite examples from their personal family experience. This is why the current housing crisis in Underhill doesn't work for me, for my family, or doesn't work for my congregation, if you're a minister or an active member of the faith community, or, you know, whatever. I mean, people who can talk about what's missing from the picture, who's missing from the picture, how Underhill can't accommodate or house those people, because that's a big missing piece right now.
Right, the realtors in the area might have a pulse on
Yes.
kind of the conversation of people who are looking and who might not necessarily be able to find a place or looking for similar price points in the area.
I guess, I don't want to be a downer here, but to me, it seems like there is no real place to build any housing to begin with, okay? So, and then maybe if this septic sewer system goes through, there will be, but it's not going to be 50 units or 10 units even maybe. So the only real development that I see happening in town is with ADUs. It's not like somebody's going to take their 100 acres and subdivide it into 10 lots. It's just, I don't see that happening.
I think
Knowing the lots of the parcels in town that I'm aware of,
Yeah.
that I know the owners that I've worked with or
I
whatever.
think I agree with you, especially in relationship to like the dilapidated buildings that exist just around the general vicinity, and having those renovated, remediated, mitigated, whatever needs to be done to those. It seems like I mean, but how that stacks up, I'm not exactly sure, but you see those houses, those homes all over the place. They could be turned into a duplex or something like that very easily.
Right.
It would just take someone with a little bit of creativity and a boatload of money, probably to some degree, to do that.
Yeah.
But I think that those opportunities live. I just don't know that they're looked at as much, maybe, as, I say that with an outsider's view, though. That's my perspective.
But, yeah, I mean, my experience is for the last probably 5 or 10 years that any lot that comes on the market, building lot, is sold within a week or two. For
Really, because
100, what's that?
Underhill is full of either homes for sale, or I think there are like 4 or 5 lots for sale right now.
Oh, they're not on MLS probably, right?
I don't know the answer to that,
Yeah.
but that's probably a pretty.
Well, they're
good
probably
guess.
priced exorbitantly because they haven't sold. I mean, a
Probably.
lot just sold down the road from me for 300,000, 8
Yeah.
acres. Could be 2 houses and 300,000.
Yeah,
That's not that, there's nothing you're going to do there.
For 300,000.
Yeah. There's
That's
nothing.
Undeveloped land,
What's that?
undeveloped.
It could be 2 lots, but there's.
It's sold?
Yeah, it's right by your house, right across the barn there.
But-
The,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
maybe you're touching on a deeper issue. I mean, maybe you're talking about something, the land, though it's not necessarily the house, but it's the land that, you know, the possibility lives on, essentially. I don't know.
Well, the land is at the bottom of a lot of the cost, basically. And a lot of it has to do with planning and regulations.
Yeah, you can speak to, Roy's more kind of single home builder as I was, and we get into the development review process as much, when you're speaking to another builder who's on a larger scale, who has to navigate the town
Yeah, for
regulations
sure.
and kind of give their feedback as far as what they see as the obstacles, and what would improve things. I mean, it certainly would be a good advocate and somebody who could provide some knowledge from the outside anyway.
Yeah. Wait, you were looking for now what the Mr.
Just, somebody like Colin Frisbee from Sterling Homes, who looks for pieces of land to be able to develop multi-unit
Mhm.
developments or multi-unit or larger scale developments of several homes on a piece of land.
Right.
So he navigates the Act 250 process and the town DRBs, kind of in all the different towns in the area. So he would have a pretty good pulse on kind of what the
It's a
what the
good
rubs are.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I'm thinking back, like I can think of probably 4 or 5 subdivisions that have happened, like behind the post office there. That's probably the biggest one. And I don't know how many houses are up there, but Phil Jacobs did that here on the land. And then there was the one up on Maple Leaf Road where Ryan lives. That's probably 5 or 6 houses. And there's one out on Pleasant Valley Road, which I think is 4 or 5. So, and those are the ones that I come to the top of off the top of my head right now that have happened in the last 20 years.
Right.
Other than them, it's been like, okay, I have 10 acres and I live in the 5 acre district. I'm gonna split a lot off for me, take 2 out of it. And that's where the development to me is happening in town. Like some people are doing that more often. So, and when that happens, those lots, the one across the street from me, like the worst lot I've experienced in a long time. Not worse. It actually came out quite nice. Most difficult to build on. It was $140,000, and I'm like, that's what you're getting now. And I mean, if you were to, and then knowing some big landowners, they're not doing anything. They're keeping it. Like on my road, there are some big parcels that those people have on them for 50 or 60 years, and I don't think there's any interest in development. So, I mean, I think that's the mix that I see in town, I guess. But who knows? Somebody with 100 acres could come along and just do it. And, but it'll end up being, very expensive lots. It's not like that person's gonna say, oh, I think I'll build some affordable housing here. I mean, they probably owned it for a while, been paying taxes, and they want to get their money out of it eventually. So I'm not sure where this is going.
I mean, I was just really looking to get your help in doing a little more detailed brainstorming. And my last question was going to be, are there organizations in town that you think, either because of the social justice orientation or because of their long time investment in community projects and attacking community problems proactively, are there groups that you would suggest that if I were interested in shaking out some possible organizational support for this, like who would I ask?
Yeah, Sandy Wilmot.
Yeah, I would ask Sandy.
She was involved in the Habitat for Humanity project.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah.
That happened, but that's actually 8 houses, and that hopefully that'll go through. It's being appealed now, and it's unfortunate.
Right.
It's just costing tons of money to get there. What's that?
Habitat.
Yeah, I mean that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
And it'll be great if it happens, but.
I feel like a representative of someone who works in finance or banking or something like that would be a good part of this coalition, just because financing is such an integral part of housing.
Well, Lee Van Winkle would too. She used to be on the She used to be on the planning commission. She's a realtor.
Okay.
She knows a lot about what's going on, what's out there.
Union Bank in town, they do a lot of construction loans.
And then we have a pretty high military presence here. I feel like a representative of something. I don't know. I know that's probably not a popular thing to say, but I also think that they have a presence here, and it probably is good to engage to some degree.
I mean, there's definitely, according to the Census Bureau, there's a significant population of retired military.
Exactly.
Veterans.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know who they are.
I don't either.
Reach out to them. We don't have a VFW wall or anything like that here.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other organizational suggestions? Potential sponsors?
Is there anything else on the bridge? So,
Well, you mentioned Rotary.
Yeah.
I know nothing about the local Rotary, but
They're actually pretty active.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know one of the guys on it. Yeah, they do volunteering for all sorts of things.
They have a lot of business people.
Yeah, they do.
I'm willing to leave it there. We don't have to keep talking about it. I'm just really looking for some ideas here
Yeah.
and where I would start. Because I mean, the call to action, I can write that in my
Yeah.
sleep. But, I'm not, I don't live here. And, it really needs to be something that's, people who live here have to, run the flag up the flagpole and attract other residents if it's going to have any legs to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
So,
move on.
yeah, let's move on. We can do the minutes or we can do the planning grant next. What's your pleasure?
Let's do the planning grant.
Okay. All right, so planning grant. So what we proposed last time that didn't get funded was to do a deep dive, or at least as much as we could afford with a small grant, to really sort of push the residents to identify. So if the villages were going to be more densely developed, like what kind of development, what would that look like? What would people support? What types of housing or types of additional commercial development do people think are needed and wanted, would be welcomed in the villages of Underhill? And a secondary question would be, would you support rezoning or redistricting long-term to if there's a vision there for how the villages should develop, like, would you support rezoning as needed or rewriting the rules as needed to facilitate that? So it's very similar to the project that I spent most of my last year in Charlotte working on. And it was helpful in some ways and in other ways frustrating, to be honest. What was helpful about it was that we had time and resources with outside help from regional planning to do a lot of in-depth outreach and public engagement work in the community. So we had, I think, maybe 15 or 20, what you call listening sessions. We did 2 town-wide surveys that got into a lot of detail about what kinds of development people wanted and what they would welcome. We did a design charrette, which is a focused design process where, people, like you attract a group of people to a meeting hall and then you spread out maps on tables and people break up into small groups and they say, well, why don't we have a senior center over here? Or why don't we, have a more like a food co-op. The town needs a food co-op. This is a good place for it. And they draw that in on the map. And then they also talked about, enhancements to infrastructure like walking paths and sidewalks and, where you would want to put, say, a pocket park in proximity to a housing development that has youngsters or a playground, that type of thing. So it's wide open. And maybe one of the reasons it didn't get funded was because it was too wide open in terms of the inquiry. Or we could put in for something different. And what municipal planning grants are supposed to provide is the ability for towns to hire outside help to do a deep dive into some aspect of planning. So it could be, just to go back to something we did last winter, it could be beefing up the protections for identified natural resources that we did through the natural resource inventory mapping process. So, we had a number of ideas came out of that process, but they would require changing the land use regs to make rules that would follow from those findings. So it could be that. It could be.
We went through, we already had a natural resource
We had the inventory. We had the information.
Right.
But we didn't change any rules to accommodate that.
Yeah, and I think as Sandy took away from us the proposal that I think she agreed to was to have an overlay map that is advisory, but not regulatory.
Specific project following from that could be to have a mapping specialist work with the Conservation Commission to actually think, what would that overlay map look like? And what would the rules to go with that look like if it's not going to be, if it is going to be regulatory? So for example, if we wanted to do a better job of protecting wildlife corridors or forest blocks, we could have an overlay district that set forth some rules or considerations that DRB would go through when they're doing project reviews. We don't have that now, but it would, we could, if we got a planning grant to do that, we could use those funds to hire experts and draw the maps and so forth. So I'm just throwing out some examples here. My own bias is towards pro-housing policies, obviously. But I don't really have any kind of spur of the moment suggestions about what planning projects could revolve around that, other than with the work we're already doing. Are there any things that the Planning Commission has talked about, like in the last 3 or 5 years, that you have put aside because there was not the time or resources to move further?
Yeah, well, there was the sidewalk, bike path thing down River Road, sidewalks and bike path through Underhill Center, but that was the River Road one. I don't even think they even did a study on that. I think they had that. I forget. Anybody remember that one? Maybe Brian does.
Well, and also, if you're talking about the same thing, maybe of a side path along the Flats Road for bicycles or something.
Along the road?
From the center to the flats.
Yeah.
Yeah, the River Road, like
River Road.
River Road, yeah, no, that never got looked at, I think, but that's, to me, that would be really awesome, but drive down that road, it's like, how would you ever do it? That's not what I do. Yeah.
How did it work in a town like South Burlington, where they really made a specific effort to create a downtown and a city center? And how did that evolve? And was that, did they have planners who created an architectural or a plan of what the vision was for that whole area?
It was zoning.
Zoning was changed to.
They changed the zoning.
That.
Yeah, and they also consciously thought about, are there properties that the city should acquire to make sort of the core built municipal services that would be necessary to create a sense of kind of a synergy around them. And then they also thought about infrastructure, so they had to make sure that there was adequate water and septic service so that they could build apartment buildings. Think about transportation planning, so they had to think about connectivity between dispersed parts of the city and how that would work. And you were just talking a minute ago about connectivity for bicycles, for example, between the two village centers. I mean, that seems like an opportunity there because right now there is no connectivity. It's like you want to get from one to the other, you're going to drive, period.
Yeah.
There's no safe way for people to get between the two. And, is that, you think that would be a priority for the town? Like, would people be interested in having that conversation?
Maybe ask Brad what happened with that, because I believe that
What
actually
happened with
did.
it, I think, is that Brad indicated that the soil types right at the edge of the road are unsuitable for expanding the road out a couple of feet either side. He said it's all sand, basically. But I'm thinking, hey, that's a good base, basically.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I don't know. I think
I don't know
that
if
should
it
be
was-
looked into a little more.
I don't know if there was actually a study or if they just studied the center. So maybe
No, I
just
don't
ask
think
them,
it was
because I think
studied.
that would be a good one. But another thought I had would be to, like with your experience with Charlotte, were people involved in surveys?
Oh, yeah. We had, our goal was to attract about minimum of 15% of the town residents, about 4,000 people, similar to Underhill.
Yeah.
And we had almost 1,000 people responded to one or both of the surveys, and we had probably 300 or 400 people participated in the focus groups, and
Wow.
and then we had about 55 people came out to the design charrette. So we had really strong participation. So when we said at the end that 90% of the folks in Charlotte wanted to encourage and allow more development in the two village centers, it meant something. Because, we had the numbers to prove it.
Yeah. But our situation is different than their village center, right? I'm just thinking of where their village center is. It's off Route 7 there, back by the store there.
Right, that's one of them, and then there's another one over in East Charlotte. So
Oh,
where
yeah, right.
Heinsberg
Yeah.
Road and Spear Street come
Mhm.
together.
Yeah.
It's really more of a rural crossroads now.
Yeah.
So do people think looking into and planning for a multi-use path between the two village centers would be something that would be worth putting forward? Because, the town owns the right of way, right?
Yeah.
It's a 50-foot wide right of way, and
Right.
the roadway only takes up about 30 or 32 feet of that now, so.
Mhm.
And it feels like a safety measure.
Oh, it is.
Feels
You've driven
important.
down that road and
I
there's
agree.
somebody running in the opposite
Oh,
direction towards the
completely.
traffic, not getting off the road.
Yeah.
And
You know,
that's crazy.
I know so much of what
school-
we're doing is planning future forward.
Yeah.
I like the idea of creating something that's tangible here and now for the people who live here and
Yes.
now.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I think that that's really important.
Yeah,
Right.
I think there'd be good support for that.
I think so too.
yeah.
the schools
Yeah,
would be big because the kids could ride their bicycles
Mhm.
safely.
from the center to the flats
That's
to go to
huge.
school.
Right.
Okay.
My first question would be to Brad, because he was involved in the
Yes.
study for the center, and I think that it didn't go any further than that, maybe.
Okay. Okay. Anything
How
else?
are we doing?
We're doing great.
Um,
Not quite a time yet.
okay, are you all set, Larry?
I think so. I mean, I'll ask Brad about that idea and what happened with it, if he thinks that's something that would be worth writing for. And then I'll take another look at the one we submitted last round and see if there's a way to tweak that to make it more interesting, because clearly it didn't land well, wasn't competitive, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems to me like if you were to ask everybody in town, have a survey that asked about, are they content with their zoning regulations? And to throw out to them that, what would you change about it? And then would you be interested in being on a focus group? To me, that might be something that you could put in it to, just because you think about, I think that's a good question, but
Okay.
I'm not sure if you could team it up with some other questions.
All right, so that brings us to the minutes, right?
Okay, so minutes, yes. Do I have any motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Wait a second.
Second,
Okay, any questions about it? Or changes? No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn? Jen?
Motion we adjourn.
Jen? Second?
All right.
Second, okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, very, very good.